When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind to Raw. It's John Pollock here alongside Wai Ting. Over the weekend, I was informed that today was a holiday in Canada. So it was nice to have a day off. Stay home, do some work from home, take in Victoria Day here in Canada. Happy Victoria Day, Wai.
Thanks, yeah. Is it a holiday in the U.S. as well?
Next week, they have Memorial Day.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Everyone's due for a holiday.
Some people.
Just feels like any other day. That's the whole point of my beginning discussion here. But That's all. How are you? How was your weekend?
Well, I had a good weekend, actually. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good. Today, not so great.
No, today was a really awful day. I think we should just get right into the news off the top, and just two really, really sad stories. Starting off with Shad Gaspard, who we got the report today that there was an issue at the beach in Venice Beach on Sunday where Shad was with his wife and 10-year-old son, and him and his son had gone swimming, and there was a rip current where lifeguards were frantically trying to get people out, and Gaspard directed the lifeguards to take care of his son, and in the midst of this, a giant wave hit, and he has gone missing. They have been unable to locate him. It looks very grim. It's just a heartbreaking story, and this guy was an absolute hero in this moment, and it obviously just looks really bad in terms of, the news that is out there. There is no official announcement. The family is requesting privacy right now, but this just totally rocked me when I heard the story today, and then there was more to come.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad. Just considering, I think how, I don't know, normal of an occasion this seemed, to start. I mean, undoubtedly, I'm sure, everybody at this point has been cooped up in their houses, and just to enjoy like a really nice weekend with the family, and to turn it into such tragedy is just incredibly heartbreaking. It's been a while, I would say, since he's sort of been in the spotlight within a wrestling circle, but like I think everybody has memories of him as a performer. Me specifically, like I think we met him. I don't know if you were on this one, John, but like I was there probably at a Comic-Con. In fact, maybe even the San Diego Comic-Con when.
Yes.
Were you there?
I was. Maybe we're talking about a separate thing. I recall interviewing both of them, Shad and JTG, at a convention, but maybe this was separate. I didn't go to the San Diego one with you.
It might have been a different Comic-Con at this point. They all kind of blended together, but I mean, from my recollection, it was just incredibly. This was after he was in the WWE, but like just had fantastic energy about him, and was just incredibly gracious, and a fellow comic fan as well. Somebody who actually wanted to produce comics. So
when we went to that Observer, they were doing like a get together with all their listeners at UFC. I want to say it was 175 weekend in 2014. And I don't know if you came with me to this or not, but I went there, and the two of them just showed up. Like they just came by and like said hello to everybody.
I don't think I was at that one. No.
Okay. It's really unfortunate news. Just really terrible, and just from all accounts, this was a guy that was just so popular among all of his friends. He had branched out a lot to television, film roles. He had tried to get a comic book going. And very young as well. So again, nothing is official right now, but he is, you would be classified as missing right now. And then we had the news that just came out of nowhere as well, and that was the passing of Larry Csonka, who was a writer for years and years at 411 Mania and is probably the most extensive reviewer you're going to find of wrestling shows. This guy reviewed everything. It was like, if there was a wrestling show, this guy had a report on it, and in pretty quick fashion. I mean, it's just, to me, he was such a go-to for so many people when it came to keeping up with all the wrestling that was out there. He would do constant reviews, and he reached out to me, I want to say around 2004, just looking to do any kind of like reports and stuff on the Law site. So he did reports for a while at the Law. I want to say it was around 2004. And then I think from there, he went on, it might have been straight to 411. I don't know if there was somewhere in between, but that was kind of my interaction with him. And, last year he had this unfortunate injury that required his leg, at least a portion of it, to be amputated, and had come back and was, still doing all of his reviews. And this guy was just a workhorse, and leaves behind a family. Just both of those stories today, I mean, they really got me down, both of them.
Yeah, certainly. This one, I think, even more, it's weird because, well, first of all, I wanted to ask you, is the proper pronunciation of his last name Csonka or Csonka? Because I've heard both.
I believe it was Csonka.
Okay. Well, in either case, like, his is really interesting because, like, he's somebody I've never met, but at the same time, you almost kind of feel like because you read his work so often. Like, pretty much any show that you would, think about, if you just Googled it for Rewind Away or whatever, like, he would probably have done a review on it. And, 411 being, I would say, a pretty, like, notable website for wrestling news throughout the entire time I've been a fan, for many years. I mean, certainly, like, I would say somebody who kind of created or helped create, inform the type of template of the industry that you and I work in right now.
Absolutely. And just to see all the people tweeting about his work, from wrestlers to different media to fans, readers. I mean, that's, to me, it's a great sign of appreciation for all the work that this individual did for all these years. That was tireless work, and just such a constant voice that was always out there, that was doing so much work that people were just just always accustomed to seeing all of his reviews. And he did podcasts as well, and previews. Like, he did just so much work. Like, to me, he was just synonymous with that site. He will be greatly missed, and obviously condolences to his family. Also, we have, just moving on, Khabib Nurmagomedov put out an update today, and this was he put this on his Instagram page, and it was translated. Last week, the news had come out that his father was in really bad health, and Khabib went on to say that he's had heart complications as a result of COVID-19, and that he had a heart operation a year ago, and the virus has caused issues for his father. He said that, obviously Khabib and his father are super, super close. So this has, greatly affected him. And he went on to say that he's had 20 relatives that have been in intensive care. So he was talking about COVID-19. He said, many people I know have died, the parents of people close to me. The virus has affected everyone. This virus doesn't ask what your surname or name is. This virus doesn't ask where you work, if you are rich or poor. Everyone has got ill. We can only overcome this together. So that is very significant. Just the number of people attached to his family that have been affected by this, and including his father. So, I would imagine his head is not in any kind of mindset to be fighting when he's got all of this that he's dealing with. But at one point, his father had been in a coma last week. He apparently has come out of the coma, but is obviously still dealing with a lot of significant health issues related to this. So that was a notable story that we got an update on today. California, Texas, and New York are all kind of discussing plans to allow sports into their states without fans, without spectators. California, I guess the most interesting one, just the fact that they have been so conservative in all of their planning, has kind of stated that, if the cases continue to, stay at a certain rate and they're coming down, they're looking at June 1st as this being a possibility. New York is willing to allow sports without fans as of May 31st, and New York looking at this option as well. So you're seeing major states that look to be opening up their doors, at least for these leagues and such. And by extension, that would mean more options for UFC to go to, more options for professional wrestling to go to as well. And you're getting at least parts of the country that are looking like sports is kind of becoming like their testing ground of what can we allow in like a very controlled environment, knowing that there still going to be some risk involved, but it seems that sports right now is something that states are at least trying to look at as something we can try, knowing that they're not going to open them to fans, though.
Right. Yeah. Really interesting to hear about other states and really other leagues, starting to come back. I'm really curious to know what testing procedures, if any of them might implement. And production wise, I'm kind of really curious to see how they treat these sort of empty arena shows as well. What would they have learned from, I would say, the experiments that have taken place thus far from all the other leagues that have started already? We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC over the weekend, if people were curious, like they were still doing the in-octagon interviews, so it looks like they're going forward with that. It wasn't just a case of, allowing Joe Rogan the one time. They seem to be continuing that. There were some without masks. I mean, Dana White was there, cage side, but I had, Wednesday and Saturday went on without a hitch. There were no new positive tests beyond like that first week with the 3. And I mean, you have to look at it. Here we are on a Monday night that you have to look at it like they did pull this off.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. But again, are we so quick enough to be able to say that without knowing afterwards?
Well,
there's people are being tested.
Well, I mean, we know that they did something like 1,100 tests throughout this week, and I would say that first batch, you would look now that they are. I mean, you're not 2 weeks out yet. Those people would have gone home on the Sunday, so we're still only 8 days removed from that first show. Like, you are right that it doesn't mean that all of these cases have, you can completely just check them off that everyone is in the clear now that they're home. There's definitely the period now that you hope there's no complications from all of this. So at least now, though, there hasn't been any new cases. So you can at least look at that there has not been this wave of people that have been coming to Jacksonville that have been testing positive, and, they have been doing rigorous testing. We are not aware of any COVID-19 testing that WWE has done, and they have been doing the most consistent shows throughout this whole period.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like it's something that the company might have to answer to as more leagues come back and, presumably they institute their own testing, and that starts to become the norm.
Over the weekend, we also got the news. PWInsider.com reported that Drew Gulak's contract expired. This came after he had appeared on SmackDown Friday. Great match with Bryan Danielson. And his contract has come to an end, and it sounds like this is a money issue, that Drew Gulak was hoping for more. And I think it's a spotlight onto where WWE is, because had this been 6 months ago, I think Drew Gulak, in the position he is in now, I think would have gotten a very healthy contract offer, and this thing would not have expired. I think he would have immediately resigned. So that tells you that the WWE is not just throwing money at anyone. And again, this goes back to our discussion about Rey Mysterio, that timing does not seem to be on his side. But with Drew Gulak, it's an interesting one as well, because not a great time to be actively seeking free agency, and he's obviously sticking to his guns, believing he's worth a certain figure that WWE is not meeting.
Yeah, it certainly puts a different context to his match with Bryan on SmackDown, and how, the two of them had, I would say, a pretty, at the time, it seemed like a pretty kind of typical embrace between, two stablemates. But now we kind of understand that it might be a bit more significant than that. And it's certainly a case of bad timing for Drew Gulak. At the same time, I respect somebody for, not signing a deal that probably would have, probably didn't make him happy, and probably would have landed him in a similar spot to what he might have been through for the past couple of years. So we shall see where he ends up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say for him, I think you would, because I don't think anyone wants to be out of work right now where there's so few companies that are going. I don't know what his options would be at the moment, that you would almost push for, if you can't get the money you want, get a short enough term deal and meet somewhere in the middle. Like, I'll sign a 1-year deal. Do you think that would be a compromise that would work for both sides? See where we are in a year. I feel I'm worth this. Or do you feel that he should take that gamble and he may have options outside of WWE?
A 1-year deal with the WWE, you said?
Let's say like a short-term deal. Like, he would be willing to meet them in the middle, maybe gets a small raise, not the bigger one he's hoping for, but it's at least a short-term deal that, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet that, okay, this is not great timing, that I can't receive what I want, but in a year's time, we renegotiate where things may be very different. And let's be honest, the WWE is not in need of any assistance financially either. Like, they're making this decision. They could obviously afford it, but they're opting not to.
I mean, that's assuming that they see Drew Gulak as somebody that they would even consider putting on a short-term deal. We don't even know if they're offering short-term deals, and certainly that changes depending on the level of star power that they're dealing with. And I guess I do question if Drew Gulak they see, on that particular level. But
is Chad Gable going to be renamed? Hey, look, it's Drewlak.
He's going to be the new Drew Gulak? You think he'll just be put right into Daniel Bryan's?
They'll give him a new name.
New buddy?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, they could do that. I mean,
the new training partner of Daniel Bryan.
Well, what we mean, I mean, I know you kind of joke, but really, they have a whole roster of people that they can put into that slot. So the bargaining power now, I mean, it was always pretty bad, but especially now, when, AEW certainly poses very little threat to signing a lot of the talent that's out there right now. They can't possibly sign everybody, right? There's just such a huge like pool and growing of talent that's out there looking for work, that they don't really see the threat, and you thus end with situations like this. So we see, the thing is, we don't even know much about Drew Gulak though. Is he somebody who really covets a position that earns him a great paycheck, or is he more happy wrestling, in a prominent position, or perhaps more likely a combination of everything?
Yeah, we'll see. And, it could be a case where him and WWE are able to reach an agreement. It may be a case where they don't. We'll see. But just interesting that we usually don't see those situations where someone is featured, I would say semi-prominently. It's not like this is a top guy leaving, but someone who, has increased his value. I think that's without question this year. He has stepped up and been one of the beneficiaries of this empty arena era over the past 2 months.
I mean, it does surprise me that, with him not having signed a contract, that he did end up having such a prominent position all the way up until the very end.
Mm-hmm. SmackDown did 2,042,000 viewers on Friday, so being able to avoid a sub 2 million viewership number, kind of staying steady now at that figure. It was relatively close to what they did the week prior. And the last thing we'll mention is that Tuesday night, it is the season finale of Dark Side of the Ring, which is, I think, going to be the most. And I feel like it's the one that everyone has been focused upon when they laid out all of the episodes, even ahead of Benoit. I would say Martha Hart sitting down, doing this interview. Oj is interviewed for it. Athena is interviewed for it. It's the first time the children have ever, to my knowledge, spoken publicly about their father's passing. And this is going to be a really heavy episode, but that's coming out Tuesday night. Do you see this one being their most viewed show? Will this top the Benoit episode?
Yes, I do. I think, you couple like the story with the fact that I think up until this point, Dark Side of the Ring has really built its name up really well, especially this season with a number of episodes. And the fact that Martha Hart has been doing a number of interviews. She was recently on Talk is Jericho. Today she did something with CBS. That coupled with, I think, just the general discussion that I personally been hearing about the interest for the show. I definitely do see it being Vice's probably biggest show that they've ever had.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into Raw from the Performance Center. This was taped last week. They'll be back next week for a new week of tapings. But this kicked off with Charlie Caruso in the ring. It was almost like we just froze from last week and we were picking up right where we left off, where Charlie said that if Randy Orton and Edge happens, it could be considered by some as the greatest match ever.
Wow. Like when last week it felt like it was a catchphrase that was certainly out of nowhere. And then you suggested that this was going to be their new tagline for the pay-per-view.
Oh, this is it.
And first thing we hear on this show was like Charlie saying the same words. This could be the greatest wrestling match ever again, and just I'm really amazed of all taglines that they decide to choose this one for poor Charlie to utter. It can't.
Have you heard? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I just can't imagine even Edge and Randy Orton being happy about having their match attached to something like this.
Yeah, it's it's like putting the most unrealistic expectation onto a match that even if it's really good, like you've labeled it something that it's absolutely impossible to achieve. So why would you even do that other than they figure it's a selling point? Like they are clearly of the thought that we're promising, well, what if it is the greatest match? I have to see this.
It absolutely is not a selling point. I think it's, if anything, it makes me go into the match already with an overly critical eye. And every time I hear Charlie say a line like that, it makes me want to laugh at it. So it turns this otherwise very serious feud into already something that I think can already be considered a bit of a joke, which is incredibly unfortunate for the performers.
Have you heard what Drew McIntyre's new tagline is?
I read your update today, yes.
He goes out and does interviews, and it was brought up in one of his interviews. He is the star of Monday Night Raw, and this is a WWE edict that he is the star of Monday Night Raw. Now, I don't know if this is only going to be for appearances, because I heard a separate interview where he was introduced as that as well, but he was never called that on the show tonight. So I don't know if it's going to be something that kind of weird to use this within the body of the show, that maybe it's just like a PR tag for Drew McIntyre as they send him out to do all these shows.
It really is. I mean, it's insane that like any company would tell an interviewer, hey, can you please promote this person as the star of our show? That's just like one of those weird WWE like PR control things that just makes everybody come across pretty bad. Like, how can Drew McIntyre? I mean, that's something like The Miz would do as a heel character.
Well, Drew, if you hear the interview, like he kind of is put off, like he's kind of hearing this for the first time. He's like, the star, I've never heard that before, and it's like, yeah, that's what the WWE edict is you're the star of Monday Night Raw. It's like, anyway, it was very funny.
So weird.
Randy Orton comes out and he explains what a straight up wrestling match is. He says Edge was the better man at WrestleMania, but I am the superior wrestler. I don't need tables, ladders, chairs, or to be the last man standing. Athletes are a dime a dozen, but an athlete can't step in and do what he does, including Edge. So in a roundabout way, he kind of discounted himself as a non-athlete.
I guess. Okay, in a way.
Athletes are a dime a dozen, but me, I'm something special.
He's saying he's better than a dime a dozen.
He said athletes are a dime a dozen, not lumping them in like athletes. The way it was worded was just kind of it was like he was exempt from the term athlete. He saw doubt in Edge's eyes, and his grit and passion have faded away. So out comes Edge with his Get Grit shirt. And he says it's a game to you, Randy, just a paycheck. Perhaps you're the most talented person I've ever seen in a ring. So the hyperbole is just mounting for this Backlash show. He says this is not the life that Randy wanted. It was the one he was handed. It was your backup plan. You don't care. You never went to bed as a child dreaming of being champion like I did, saving your money to attend the next event like I did, crying the night you won your first Intercontinental title like I did because it established me on the road to being a workhorse here in this company, and reminds Randy he beat him for that title in 2004. And Orton never had a career-ending injury that he had to fight to come back from. You don't love the sport like I do, and the locker room does. And he accepts the challenge. Randy leaves, and then we cut to Samoa Joe, who says, this has the potential to be the greatest wrestling match ever, with the exception of my match with Kobashi in 2005.
I couldn't believe he said that.
Yeah, the star of All Japan Pro Wrestling and the star of Pro Wrestling Noah, Kenta Kobashi.
Yes, of course. Yeah, aside from all that weirdness, I mean, I think these two continue to showcase excellent, serious chemistry in this build, and it's no easy task right now. You know, they did such a great job the first time. Now they have to do it again, using a different reason for the match, doing it without that much time separated from the WrestleMania match, and this time with no crowd or no major angle like we saw the first time. All they really have to rely on this time around is their ability to talk and tell stories, and Edge was up to bat here, and I thought he hit a home run. He delivered some dialogue that had a great deal of conviction in his criticisms of Randy Orton. He's an incredibly passionate talker, and that I felt really sucked into the promo. It got me right back into the program.
It was a good setup for the match. I think that I'm very curious to see what they take from the last match, what they apply to this. This obviously has to close the show at Backlash. The question becomes,
you can't put the greatest wrestling match ever second to last.
No. We said it's the greatest third match on a 5-hour show in WWE history this year. We'll see if they move the goalposts on their qualifications, but it has to go on last. Does it get 30 minutes is my question.
Oh, Jesus. Well, depends on your definition of the greatest match ever. Do you feel like the great matches all need to be more than 30?
I don't think this one can be 10. No. I think it should be like 17.
I think it'll be north of 20. My guess.
You don't think it hits 30?
Oh, man. You know, but I think we're making a mistake comparing the last match to this one, because they'll have many more. It's kind of weird. Because
I'd argue I think they have less in this environment in terms of what they can do for 30 minutes.
I contend that, like, you know, in a Falls Count Anywhere match, you can't really do much, you know, in the way of wrestling moves. All they really had in their arsenal was like slamming each other's heads into walls. And granted, you know, AEW just showed that you could do a whole lot more than slamming each other's heads into walls in a Falls Count Anywhere match. But in their particular match that they decided to do, they didn't do a whole lot but like walk through the hallways and slam each other's heads into objects. This match is going to be a wrestling match, John, perhaps the greatest wrestling match ever. And I think you'll see, you know, much more of a standard, you know, narrative of wrestling match that these guys are obviously incredibly seasoned in.
Murphy walked up to Rollins, who's in a suit, and Rollins has had a revelation that he's going to tell the world. Did you catch any of the News Slam segments tonight?
No.
Scott Stanford is now hosting these in his backyard.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was on his back deck on a phone, like sending these in. And it's funny because like they're just generic reads for the network. And like, to me, you must have this verbiage banked in the studio. Like, it's not like you're plugging new events that you've got to have a new script for. Like, I guess there's maybe some mentions now of the last ride that might not have been in there. But anyway, he's doing them from his backyard.
That's neat. Yeah. Saves a trip to the studio and saves the cruise trip. Yeah. Cool.
I assume it's his backyard. It could have been, well, my backyard is not sufficient, so I'm going to go across town to a buddy's or something.
Just a random person's backyard he snuck into?
Yeah. Instead of in your house, he's like just outside of your house, and then the neighbors are going to, hey, are you trespassing? These could be the best segments. Scott Stanford getting chased out of Stanford.
Wow.
Seth Rollins and Murphy come to the ring. For the Rollins handshake, and then 24 hours later, Rollins, the psychopath, just move on. We're right back to where we started with Seth. He's now back to the Messiah and more subdued than before, which is something.
Yeah. Going back a week ago to Money in the Bank, and I would say a very clear tease of a babyface turn. You left that show feeling that way, and then on Raw, I don't even think they really played with it all that much. The tension of whether or not he was going to actually turn babyface before he finally
not at all,
like reverted back to being a full-on heel. Yeah, they didn't really spend that much time playing around with that, is he or isn't he?
So they come to the ring, and Tom Phillips said that Ray may have nerve damage to his eye. They're waiting for the swelling to go down. It could be critical.
Perhaps, yeah.
Critical to like his eyesight. Critical to eye staying
I believe
there.
They said critical, like
critical, like could this eye injury end his life?
I don't know.
A week later, Rollins said he fell into a dark place after losing to Drew McIntyre. This dark place that lasted 24 hours. Without darkness, there can be no light. And he can see the light now because of Ray. And tells Ray, it was a blessing in disguise what I did to you, and you can now tell me you're welcome. Humberto Carrillo comes out to confront him. Ray is his idol, and Rollins is a coward. And Murphy stands in front. Rollins is not dressed to compete, but he volunteers for Murphy, who already has a match with Aleister Black tonight, to take on Humberto Carrillo. That was our first match, and I'm going to point out an interesting observation that of the 8 matches on tonight's episode of Raw, do you know how many were interrupted with a commercial break?
Okay. How many were interrupted with a break? I'm going to say 7 of them.
0.
What?
There was not one commercial break that interrupted a match tonight. And before the main event, the longest match, 3 minutes and 48 seconds that the submission match got. Everything else was under that time until the main event. The main event got nine minutes. So I don't know if that was, they're just trying something this week, if this is a response to their audience that let's do shorter matches. They definitely went through that experiment a year ago. But this one, the fact you didn't notice, it wasn't as painful as it was last year, where they had to come up with all these ways to break up matches to go to commercials. They just did short matches on this show. It was all like 2 to 3 minute matches.
Well, I skipped through all the commercial breaks anyway.
We had, again, short match here. Carrillo gets yanked off the turnbuckle, nailed Murphy with an enziguri, but then he's distracted by Seth, goes for a springboard, caught with a knee, and Murphy's Law, 2 minutes, 50 seconds. Murphy gets the win, and then they're beating down Carrillo when Aleister Black runs down to help, and Murphy ducks Black Mass, retreating to the floor, and Aleister Black is seething, and we'll get Murphy and Black later in the show.
Yep, short acrobatic match, really all it needed to be.
King Corbin's backstage yelling at a PA. He wants his own locker room, which I think in this climate, completely reasonable request.
Yeah, sure.
Shouldn't be stuffing all these guys into a locker room. He meets with the referee. He said there were fingerprints on my crown, and he needs to get his own food. and tells the referee to fix this. You know, in short doses, in a lower enough role, this guy is more than fine, and like fine personality.
Those are a lot of qualifiers.
Well, this guy requires a lot of qualifiers to make him have his part in this show. But in small doses, I'm fine with this guy. Like, he's just an obnoxious dick. Like, that's the character.
Sure.
The problem is, once you're looking at your watch and suddenly this is the 9-minute match on the show with this guy. Total Bella's promo. Artem might propose to Nikki. What will Nikki say?
We'll find out.
We came back from break. Liv Morgan is nearly in tears talking about her mom. Her mom is her hero. Her mom didn't have a job or a savings account, but she had determination. She never quit, and I am my mother's daughter. I learned from my loss to Charlotte Flair. And just like my mother, she learned just like her mother would, and one day she is going to be Raw Women's Champion. So in her quest to figure things out, she's on her path.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah. There's a lot of emotion on her face right from the beginning of this segment. It certainly got my attention. You could tell that, she was really trying to speak from the heart. By the end, though, I felt like this was kind of a little too short for me to realize exactly what made her mom, like, never give up, never give up doing... I guess never gave up, like, what, providing? Is that what she meant?
Couldn't this have worked a lot better last weekend, right after Mother's Day? Like, this would have, had some tie-in last week, the day after Mother's Day, as opposed to this week, where we come back from break, and she's already, in tears. It was like, I wasn't quite following this all. Like, I kind of got the story by the end of this. She has a tough upbringing, and her mom was her role model here. Right. This is a character that I think Liv is doing the best with this. This is not always the easiest to get across. I think she is a better speaker than most, but this was still kind of out of left field. It was
difficult subject matter to, I think, be able to convey in such a short amount of time in the type of setting that she was given, just talking in front of a camera. It might have been like a better story suited for like something that was a bit more pre-produced, when maybe we'd even get to see her with her mom, what she looks like, and getting into a bit more detail about what exactly Liv was talking about. Because by the end of this, I know that she had a rough upbringing, but for it to really hit home, I don't think enough was revealed.
Yeah. So Flair comes out once again. They refer to her as the hardest working woman in any industry.
Okay. I mean, listen, on the list of like grand statements on this show, that's not even top 2.
Not the hardest working woman in WWE, the hardest working woman in any industry, anything, name it. Charlotte Flair's topping you in work ethic. She calls Sasha a lackey before correcting herself and saying a sidekick of Bayley. And they're building up that match for Friday, champion versus champion. And she's going to teach Bayley that there's levels to being a champion, and calls out Ruby Riott. And they have a match. Riott gets taken by the hair and sent into the post. This was the first of, I think, 540 post shots on this show. Flair waves to Liv Morgan in the camera, and it was kind of strange. She was like mocking Ruby and then saying, say hello to Liv. And it was almost as though this was Ruby Riott back as a babyface and aligned with Liv Morgan, even though they were feuding last they interacted. Ruby then stomped Flair's hand and hits a flatliner, rolls into this crucifix, and bends back the fingers. Flair is able to get up, stomps at her, the Riott kick gets stopped, and then she stomps her some more. Figure 8, which she bridges on one arm because of her hand being injured, and gets the tap, and Flair is selling her hand, so I would imagine that plays into the match with Bayley, that she's going in with this hand injury.
Hopefully.
Fine match. Short, very quick.
Yeah, I thought a good little TV match between two veterans. They're pushing Charlotte as this very dominant champion, And man, she's really being relied upon right now on all of their shows, and I'm sure they'll continue doing that with Becky not being around.
Charlie was with Bobby Lashley, and MVP walked in. He said that they will not be doing business together because Lashley is busy dealing with clowns like R-Truth and Lana, and asks, what would happen if you used the full Nelson on Drew McIntyre? But you're never going to know. It's been 13 years since you had a title shot, and you must be cool with that. But when is Lashley going to free Lashley? And MVP walks off, and Lashley is left to contemplate this suggestion.
Yeah, I thought MVP was just, as always, really good here. His delivery is very natural. He makes these otherwise, very staged WWE backstage segments feel a bit more genuine.
Yeah, I think he's, a great voice to have on the show that comes across very, very natural. We had our first axe throwing segment with the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits in the park, where the Viking Raiders are joined by fellow Vikings, and they have started a bonfire to create the smoke for the Street Profits.
Yes. Funny.
Montez Ford wants to forfeit once Ivar starts throwing and hitting the bullseye repeatedly with the axe. But there would be no forfeit. We would get many more segments to come involving the smoke. Kairi Sane is in the ring. It's all decorated for a Asuka celebration. And Asuka comes out, thanks Kairi, who's presenting her with flowers. They run through that she is now a Grand Slam champion, having won the NXT, SmackDown, and Raw Women's Championships, along with the women's tag titles. Asuka's dancing away, and then she spoke. And were you able to translate this?
Asuka?
Yes. Because I could.
Did she? Okay, sure.
Asuka said, there's a contest coming up in a few weeks with Post Pro Res. Would you like to enter, Kairi? And Kairi said, sure, I've never heard of this show. Let's enter our submission with a flute. And right there, they were disqualified.
Recorder, actually.
A recorder?
Yeah.
This is different from a flute?
Yeah, it wasn't quite a flute. But I mean, you never played the recorder in school?
No, we had flutes in band. I played the clarinet.
I think a recorder would be fine. She would still be eligible.
Well, she starts playing, and this is broken up by Nia Jax coming out. And she said that Asuka was handed the title because Becky can't fight anymore. She's on maternity leave, and Asuka has landed a temp job. And she's going to be replaced by someone more worthy. Me. And Asuka jumps her, attacks her with kicks, and lays her out with a hip attack to the floor. And this was the first of several beatdowns by Asuka to Nia Jax on this show. They did a wonderful job of making me want to see this match by the end of the night. Asuka just beat the shit out of this woman all night.
Well, I think part of the idea throughout this episode was to continue Asuka's babyface turn. And I found the segment really interesting because they have to do all of this without really having either her nor Kairi be able to, rely on typical promos, especially when you want to tell some story about a character change. So, despite all that, though, I thought they were incredibly successful in, creating compelling TV with such little words being spoken here. Namely from Kairi, who I thought did a great job, again, carrying on, I would say what her and Asuka started with, just great charismatic body language while occasionally popping in a few English words here and there, so you do know the gist of what it is that they're trying to say. I thought it was pretty simple. It was clever. They had basically Nia beat up the friend of Asuka, and then you had Asuka stand up to the bully, standing up for her friend. And I think just the visual of seeing Asuka, the smaller person, go up unafraid completely against the giant and Nia Jax and getting the better of her repeatedly, that to me was part of making a badass babyface.
I would have just more so built up to that. That should be the challenge for Asuka.
Well, I mean, the heat was her beating up on her friend, right? And I do wonder if there's any sort of concern about making Asuka look weak at this point when you need, a big baby face, like the Drew McIntyre template.
It is similar. And Drew, you can see how far they are going in that direction. Charlie interviewed King Corbin, and Drew was watching the interview separately, and he said he carried Drew for a year, but he's dangerous, still makes mistakes, and next time he faces Drew, it's going to be in the main event of WrestleMania where he will take the title. This was like a bit of a compliment. Like, he believes, Drew's going to have this title for a year.
Sure. Yeah, I guess so.
Kevin Owens is back tonight. They plugged the Kevin Owens show would be coming up with Zelina Vega and crew. And R-Truth was in the ring, mentioned his cousin Pretty Ricky, told him that Lashley has been a bad man, and aired the attack last week. So I guess we're to believe that last week this was Pretty Ricky getting beaten up, and R-Truth is finding out about it after the fact. He said he does not want to feel Nelson from The Simpsons again, and then cuts a promo on Tom Brady to win the 24/7 title back. I'll say this, I'm not expecting this, but it would be amazing if this guy ends up going and challenging Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady does some kind of run-in and helps Gronkowski retain this title. I think that would to me, I will say nothing negative of the 24/7 title ever again if they get Tom Brady to actually be involved in a segment when they film this at some point down the road.
Well, that would be a wonderful surprise. Yeah.
Like, he's name dropped him twice now. I was like, I'm not expecting it, but it would be such a fun cameo if Gronkowski, like, this was part of his whole thing, was calling in a favor for Tom Brady to do a bit for WWE with him.
I'm sure, like, Gronkowski would be able to do that.
Maybe it'll happen. R-Truth and Bobby Lashley. Truth goes to the floor. He puts the Pretty Ricky teeth in, but then starts landing some shots, and Lashley overpowers him, drives him into the barricade, into the post, clotheslines, knees, full Nelson slam, and then the full Nelson submission in 2:23. MVP comes out clapping, and we cut backstage, and Lana is losing her mind, just destroying everything backstage in a rage.
She can't take it. She can't take the fact that her man is successful without her.
She's like, I came to both of these tapings this week for this.
Yeah. Sorry, you just
feels like Lana is
completely there.
Oh, what do you see? Do you feel like Lana is still going to be heavily involved in all of this, or is this like slowly an easing out for Lana?
Well, they're clearly like sowing the seeds for some type of story between all of them. So I expect some resolution. I mean, is this, her on her way out? Possibly. Very possible.
Because I really like Lashley and MVP together, but I could also see Lana being ultimately aligned with the three of them as a group. We'll see where they go. Asuka and Sane are backstage. And then we just see Nia Jax staring at them in the background. And as Asuka and Sane go in opposite directions, Nia trails Kairi. Mm-hmm. So almost waiting for like the Michael Myers, the Halloween theme to start. Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross against the Iconics for the tag titles. The Iconics cut a promo talking about last week's match and said that they can drop off their titles. The future is right here. And the match begins. And they just had a sprint here for 2:45. Billie Kay missed a boot into the rope. Bliss gets tagged. She drops the knees down. Cross then attacks Peyton Royce and sends her to the floor. And Billie Kay kills Nikki with this running boot, turns around, right hand by Alexa. And then Alexa's on the top turnbuckle, hits Twisted Bliss when Peyton Royce returns and throws Bliss repeatedly into the post. Once, twice, 3 times, and on the 3rd time, that's it. That's just too heinous. The DQ is called at 2:45, and number one, I thought this worked a lot better than last week's match. You could see they worked very hard here. It was super short, which to me I didn't really get up in arms about a DQ because it was so short. But what I did like was the fact that Peyton Royce was visibly upset, what did I do? I actually cost myself these tag titles, and this wasn't just some trivial DQ. They actually tried to put some emphasis on this giant mistake that was made by Peyton Royce, who kind of just snapped here. Am I being too kind to this?
Well, no, because that was certainly the intent to set up the story afterwards between these two. It was a very brief match, but I do feel like the Iconics look improves. They're harder hitting than usual. And what I didn't like was how Nikki Cross was celebrating the DQ win, you know, especially as a babyface. It's such a cowardly, like it should, I feel like the reaction should be more confusion and then acceptance than, you know, celebrating as if like you had just earned this win.
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess for Nikki Cross, she went into this one. It's like, hey, we lost last week. Let's just try and escape any way possible.
I guess
So, first off, Kairi is on her own with her recorder playing Asuka's theme.
Mm-hmm.
Nia comes from behind and destroys her, throwing her into an equipment case, and Kairi is just left laying.
Yep.
The Iconics are backstage. Billie Kay is yelling at Peyton Royce, "That was our one chance and you blew it." And she slaps Peyton, and both are shocked that Billie Kay did this. And then they start crying, they hug, and they tell each other that they love them. This was very strange, and I would not be advocating for these two to split up, but what else could this be kind of hinting at?
It's certainly the tease. I think, you know, you could still end up with the story that doesn't result in the two of them breaking up. If anything, I'm just incredibly happy that we are actually getting a story for the Iconics, and it's a story where the two of them can really rely on nobody but themselves in order to, you know, tell that story, because certainly they are two performers that have great chemistry when they're on the same side. When they're dueling, I expect that to be probably, you know, pretty compelling, at least in terms of, you know, backstage behind the scenes stuff. This is also finding a way to tell a story between a women's tag team in the WWE without them actually needing the tag team titles. And certainly, like on the SmackDown side of things, that's been very successful with Mandy and Sonya. You know, the Iconics will be interesting because they've been so comedic throughout the entire run. Now that they actually have to do what you would assume to be, you know, a serious storyline, can they actually do it? But either way, like I'm happy for them that they're actually getting a story.
Yeah, there's a lot of women's stories that are happening on Raw now, between this Iconics thing they've just introduced with Asuka and Nia, which with Kairi's attached to that. They're doing something now with Natalya's character. You've got Shayna in the mix. But the odd ones out to me are Bliss and Cross, that maybe they make more sense putting them on SmackDown with the tag titles, where there are a lot of women there, because Bliss and Cross just seem they don't have any teams to work with, and they're sort of just floating around.
No, throughout this program with the Iconics, it really just felt like, you know, by the end of this, that they were there to further the Iconics' own story, which is still good, you know, which is like making use of these belts in order to tell something. But yeah, on the SmackDown side of things, we'll see who they build them up for. And as always, we have to remember these belts can be defended on NXT as well. So if they ever see the need to do that they can use them there as well.
Asuka is tending to Kairi with the trainer. They say she's going to be okay, but Asuka is pissed. And then after the break, she tracks down Nia, and Nia just walks past her. So Asuka goes left kick cemetery, right kick graveyard, Mirko Krokop style on her, and leaves Nia. I won't say laying. It was more so like Nia went down and was posing like she was laying on a couch. That's kind of the look that was on her face. Like she was inconvenienced by this head trauma. It
was kind of nice of Asuka to kick Nia right next to some cushions lying on the
Exactly.
ground.
Yeah, she had her. Well, she wants to keep her pay-per-view payday in check. She doesn't want to lay this woman out, and she smashes her head on the floor or something.
Right. Sure. But I do love the fact that you had Asuka like get the better of the bigger bully Nia twice on this show. It, to me, like, again, helps her presentation as this badass babyface.
Shayna Baszler and Natalya had the perhaps shortest submission match in history. And this would be the example of one where I would say that perhaps like this is like something that they are. This was the one where it hit me that it's like, okay, they are going out of their way to keep all these matches into one segment, because this went 3 minutes and 48 seconds. Not that it was bad, just that it was.
I'm honestly amazed because I watch all these matches and I never felt any of them were too long. Yes, but I never felt any of them were too short either. And I think maybe that tells you how I feel about long matches that don't need to be long matches. Long matches that are long only for the sake of like filling up TV time, that have no storyline implications for them to be that long. This to me was perfectly acceptable for Natalya versus Shayna Baszler, which, you know, I was interested personally just to see the in-ring technique, but in terms of storyline, honestly, probably would have had trouble keeping my attention for an extended amount of time. So I had no problem with it.
I thought this show moved. I thought that the pacing was very good on this show. It was not like there were no blowaway matches on this show, but I thought that the pace was significantly better this week in terms of just one segment to the next. They kept reminding you what's coming up, and to me it was an easier 3-hour show than other weeks where we're going into the third hour and you know it's going to be that 2 to 3 segment match, and we're just crawling to the finish.
Mm-hmm.
So early on, the sharpshooter gets countered, and Shayna goes for an ankle lock that Natalya kicks free. Shayna's like checking on her teeth. Thought she was Anthony Smith here. Baszler attacks the arm, and Shayna, this is one of the joys of no crowd that you can hear this stuff. She just tells Natalya, that heart crap doesn't work on me. Baszler stomps down, and then Baszler goes for the sharpshooter. Natalya counters it to apply her own, and Baszler fights to the rope, but they won't break it, and she has to crawl to the floor to get the escape. Natalya then tries a knee bar that Shayna counters, taking her back and applying the Kirifuda clutch, grabs the arm of Natalya with her leg, and Natalya is forced to tap at 3 minutes, 48 seconds. Fun match for the time it lasted. I'm not really complaining. They could have gone longer. I think these two would have had no problem getting 8 or 9 minutes, but it was entertaining for the time they had.
I would love for these two to go longer once they have a better story established for it. Once there are more stakes attached to it, once once they earn really, the ability to go 10, maybe even further than that. But, for a short match, I was completely satisfied here. I loved the finish. You had Shayna here do this like beautiful like ninja roll type of counter into a rear naked choke. That is a very beautiful, very legitimate technique. And you don't see enough people with like legitimate grappling training, especially in the WWE, make use of like really pretty jiu-jitsu techniques in a wrestling match. So for me, it was really nice to finally be able to see Shayna like, do this style of match on a USA primetime TV show. I love that these two continued to be able to showcase the very unique chemistry that they have. I hope it means more of this from Shayna in the future, and seems to be, a place to springboard to a Natalya losing streak story.
What hasn't been put together is the fact that we have the timing of Shayna's main roster call-up coinciding with a new producer in MVP that is a guy that's a very experienced grappler that, I would think that would be someone that you would assign to like the Shayna Baszler matches. I think would have the eye for what they're trying to do, but understanding Shayna's style a lot as well.
Certainly, yeah. I'd love to know if he would be in charge of something like this. Certainly, somebody like TJ, I think would have great knowledge of like legit, MMA technique as well. And obviously, if Shayna is involved, she'll probably suggest a whole lot too.
Yeah. And had the Kirifuda clutch not worked, she also had the back to be able to bite the neck. That could have been the closing submission. Yeah. That's Did she have the mouth guard in though? Got to take the mouth guard out first, I think. Yeah, she reinserted it after taking the kick from the knee bar attempt. So she did have that in. So that was unfortunate. Natalya is just devastated, and this, like the last match, I thought that there was a bit of a focus placed on losing the match. Like there was some weight attached to this loss, much like it was for Peyton Royce. And the crew is quickly changing up the set because the Kevin Owens show is coming up. So they're getting all the props into the ring, and Natalya's just in there. She's throwing a fit and just tears apart the set. And Samoa Joe just buries her, says this is beneath her, and just runs down Natalya for being a poor sport, and that this is beneath her to be acting childish. It's
it's interesting to see how effective WWE may be lately in trying to tell stories through losses. We saw it with Apollo Crews. It seems to be, his losses coming off of being taken out of Money in the Bank are ways to springboard him into an actual push. And it looks like it might be the case here with the Iconics as well, and also Natalya. So we shall see. I love the fact that they had her have her tantrum as the KO show stage was being set up.
It was a nice touch.
It was really funny.
Yeah. And what I liked about it was like they weren't just hitting you over the head. Like it's just a visual that you can see and you get the story just through the visual. You don't need to have Tom Phillips yelling at us about, oh, Natalya's still upset and look, they're moving on to the next segment. This is such a disservice to Natalya. It was like, okay, we get it. It was like a nice little, it told the entire thought process of what Natalya is going through and made it clear.
I'm interested to know like what sort of change we're going to see in Natalya, because I think if it's just another heel turn like we saw not that long ago, I don't know. I don't know if that would be like, a little disappointing. I would love to see like a full-on character shift in her, maybe like a different style of promo, maybe even a different style of wrestling, because I feel like part of her disappointment here should be the fact that Natalya's gimmick for the longest time is that she is a technician of the roster. Well, here the technician lost a submission match to somebody who, has proven now to be better at submissions than her. So, like, this should be the start of some sort of personality crisis for Natalya.
Andrade, Austin Theory, and Angel Garza are all arguing backstage, and Zelina Vega walks in and tells them all to stop. They're going to go out onto the Owens show and be on the same page, and she goes one by one, asking if each of them understand, and she gets to Austin Theory. Do you understand? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Oh my gosh, I gave too much personality to this response. This was a robot's response, Austin Theory.
Yeah, at this point, he hasn't really, been called upon to do too much more. Honestly, like he's just really a body right now.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can really do with "yes, ma'am" as your big line, but there we go. Kevin Owens is out to his dismantled set, and he talked about getting his moment at WrestleMania that came at a price because he got banged up, but he's good to go now, and he's back. Vega comes out with the crew, and she thinks Owens only wants a Jerry Springer episode based off of one little issue that they had. She explains that Andrade is a god among insects. Insects?
Yeah, isn't that... I mean, that's... What, is that offensive to insects?
I guess so. I can't imagine getting so upset that I was like, you bug, you life form that is beneath me.
It's certainly not a compliment. Like, if I called you an insect, would you...
I wouldn't know how to respond to that. I mean, I think I'd be pretty resourceful. If I'm one of these killer hornets, I mean, I'd be a threat.
You'd be deadly, sure. Yeah. I think the insinuation is that you're small.
Okay. She then speaks about Angel Garza as the lethal Lothario who breaks faces and hearts, and then gets to Austin Theory. He's the prodigy, and she is the best this business has seen in a long time. See, I like Zelina Vega that she doesn't go the WWE route.
She's humble.
I am the greatest ever. No, I'm the best we've seen in a long time. Nice statement that has its equal amount of qualifying as well.
I'm the 12th best wrestler that is currently on Raw right now.
Of all the managers that have come by in the last, let's say 5 years, I'm top tier. I'm up there.
Yes. I think we need more truthful statements like that.
She said they came from the streets and survived, but all streets come with sidewalks, and they're for people like Kevin Owens. You sidewalk insect, French Canadian.
Ouch.
Owens is chastised because he's standing on the apron and is explaining that, I've been outnumbered by a lot of people over the last while, so that's why I'm here. And also, we're having another guest, Apollo Crews. And Apollo Crews storms out. He tackles Andrade. They have this wild brawl. This was the most fire I have seen in Apollo Crews ever. And this would set up a tag match after the break, as Kevin Owens' comeback was a commercial break to get ready for.
I thought it was the most fire I saw out of Crews since the slap 3 weeks ago.
Oh, this was more to me. This was a really good brawl for the 30 seconds it lasted.
Well, I think it told me that Crews, despite having 3 weeks off, still managed to maintain that level of, I would say, intensity in a comeback like this that you would assume would be able to pull out in any of his matches now. So it is just, further proof that he now really does have this ability to be able to showcase that personality throughout the match. I mean, in many ways, I would say this was one of the missing elements of his entire game, coupled with, I think, a real improvement in his promo ability as well.
So Apollo brawled with him, and then he yelled at Zelina. He said, "I am an insect. I'm a bee because I've got all the buzz in this show." Jeez. Andrade and Angel Garza took on Owens and Crews. This was a telltale sign, Way, because what was the first thing that happened in this match? Off come Garza's pants. I immediately wrote down, not going long. Crews' left knee is wrapped up, selling the injury. They snap Owens' neck on the top. Crews gets tagged. Owens, while he was in there, very hard hitting for the 30 seconds he was in this match. Crews then gets tagged, and Andrade immediately tags out to avoid Crews and gets dropped off the apron. Crews hits a spine buster. Again, a lot of fire. Vega gets onto the apron, and then Austin Theory goes to strike from the apron, misses, hitting Garza by mistake, and Crews hits his spinning sit-out powerbomb. That is called the Toss Powerbomb. Definitely needs a new name, and he wins in 2 minutes and 53 seconds. The Toss Powerbomb.
Yeah. Crews' big return, seemingly pushing their way towards Crews Andrade, and maybe not as impactful of a return as I envisioned, but it really does depend on the follow-up.
I thought this was a really good appearance for Crews. Are you talking about Owens or Crews?
I'm talking about Crews.
Yeah, I really liked the segment. It was really good for Crews, I thought. Owens kind of just more and more of a background player here.
Well, I suppose for me, I envisioned Crews coming off of the show 3 weeks ago, really to me as the star of that particular show. That I suppose I expected something maybe a bit bigger than coming in the middle of a Kevin Owens show segment. But at the same time, nothing's really going to seem that big or small without a crowd there anyway.
They argued in the ring, and then Andrade attacks Austin Theory, and Garza starts helping him. Andrade sends him to the floor. Joe calls this beatdown the severance package, and Vega calls Austin Theory useless, and they never should have believed in him, and gives him the slap of death. He's sent into these chairs and left laying, and boy, was this a beatdown, because it would last multiple segments. He just laid dead here
his laying down lasted multiple segments, yeah.
Charlie interviewed Drew McIntyre. Monday night is a good time for a Claymore party, and the invites between brands allows for dream matches, and his number one dream match has fallen into his lap, King Corbin, because he's genuinely a terrible human being, but he's also dangerous. And you've chosen to fight me, you're out of your mind. And he has a special Claymore fit for a king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fine.
Back to the axe throwing. The Viking Raiders are very good at this. The Street Profits are very bad at it. There was a line where Montez Ford was getting ready, and he said, "I have to get my Tiger Woods on," as he got a grip onto the axe. And Ivar said, "Wait, there's tigers in the woods?" I applaud this because there was not a Tiger King joke that immediately followed it. Ford then launches an axe into the forest. We continue after the break. Dawkins winds up, and the axe goes into a barrel of water. And all of the fellow Vikings are pissed about this wasteful display.
Yeah. Yep. I mean,
I was awaiting the punchline, and by segment 3, we had not gotten there yet. But we still had 2 more segments to go of this.
Yeah. Very corny this week, but I mean, last week was pretty corny as well. But this time they're dragging it out to several segments.
Aleister Black and Murphy. Murphy and Rollins are already out. They didn't even do the entrances for them. Rollins is already checked out of the match because he notices this prone body by the timekeepers area. It's Austin Theory. And Black is attacking Murphy. He goes to the floor. He misses a kick, and he kicks the post, which, I mean, you should see some of, like, these seasoned, like, Muay Thai practitioners. They're kicking trees all day. Like, they're calloused up. This would have no impact. This would just be like another day training. But this killed Aleister Black. He was legless for the rest of this match. Rollins offers his hand to Austin Theory, telling him, "I know what you're here for." And Murphy has made his comeback, but the knee sets him up for the Black Mass, but Rollins sends in Austin Theory for the DQ in 2.5 minutes. And Black goes after Theory. Murphy assists. They double team him. Kamagoye, and then the ATL by Austin Theory. Rollins hugs Theory. Meanwhile, Murphy is watching from a distance across the ring, which may as well have been 5 miles apart. And suddenly, Rollins has a new favorite toy named Austin Theory. And Woody is just staring at Seth Rollins and Buzz.
Woody. Because he's wooden?
Toy Story.
You're saying Austin Theory is Woody?
No, he's Buzz Lightyear, the new toy. Woody is the old discarded toy.
Oh, I see. I get it. Very nice. Yeah. So it seems like they're rebuilding Seth Rollins' stable, which means this whole gimmick is definitely here to stay. And essentially, it's just transitioning Theory from Zelina's group to Rollins' group, which I think is fine. It likely just means that, instead of being Zelina's fall guy, he's now Rollins' fall guy. But I don't know. I guess it builds Rollins back up into a bit more of a threat without the Authors of Pain being around.
I guess. Yeah, this group just has no life at the moment. We'll see where they go. This is kind of a stage 1 with Austin Theory inserted. It is interesting to note that with him being added to the IC title tournament, it seems like AJ Styles it feels like he's been taken off Raw.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, and that would make sense.
I mean, he comes back, he goes on Mixer, and he's not on Raw.
But he's on SmackDown.
Well, he's on SmackDown. It's just kind of I guess they figure, yeah, he's just going to be there for now.
For him on Raw. He's probably going to face Bryan on SmackDown or somebody else.
More axe throwing. Now we're on to the competition. Each side gets 10 axes, but only a score is counted if you hit the bullseye. So the Viking Raiders are dominating. The Street Profits are terrible. On his last try, Ford hits a bullseye. Just because. But then the police show up with an axe that has gone through their windshield, and they ask, who did this? Well, by process of elimination, let's find out who can throw this properly. And Dawkins does a trick shot by throwing the axe backwards and hitting it. And that proved that it can't be them because they can only throw bullseyes. They could not possibly have missed.
Right. Yes. It's so. I love the idea that a cop would try to solve a mystery by getting people to throw an axe to see who might be the one to do it and who wouldn't.
I would hate to see these two cops investigating a homicide. Who shot this person? By mistake. Let's see who can hit targets.
No, it's incredibly stupid. And again, like, you have to kind of be like, I watch this the way I would watch something like out of the 80s that the WWE would have produced. In comparison to even some of those, this was not.
Dude, Fuji Vice would have been way more thought out in its time than this was.
It's very true. But I think I'm just grateful that for anything that gets them out of the arena at this point.
Yeah, with a big group. Completely unnecessary group.
You think they were testing at this axe throwing competition?
I doubt They were even axing them if they had been properly social distancing ahead of this time.
Okay.
Moving on. That was as bad as this segment. Charlie and Apollo Crews. He was injured and lost his spot at Money in the Bank. He doesn't know which one was worst. This has been the longest 3 weeks of his life, and he had to look deep. I can't waste any more time. Next week, I'm challenging Andrade for the United States title. And Vega walks in saying, you can cut your losses with one good knee and pull out of this match, or you can face Andrade next week and never walk again. What a threat. I mean, Apollo should have just said, have you watched my run? I had my legs cut out from under me multiple times in this company, and still I can stand on these two.
Oh, my. Excellent, yeah.
Then we had our final. I thought Zelina was great on this show, by the way.
She's always really good, yeah. I mean, that to me is no surprise, but I thought Apollo continued to impress me, you know?
I liked Apollo, too, on this. I thought this was... I was more impressed with kind of his involvement here than even like a couple weeks back. I thought he really showed like he was, you know, I don't want to say like taking this seriously, but more so like you can see like a certain confidence level that this is a real push that he believes he is in the midst of and is rising to the occasion for it.
Yeah. Rather than maybe how he came across with the Shorty Gable feud. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yes, uninspired.
Right.
The last axe throwing contest has the cops doing a lineup here with the four of them. And they're explaining that someone could have got seriously hurt, but they're going to let them go because Ivar is cute. But Eric, not so much. And Ivar gives a big grin to end the segment. This was the culmination of like 5 of these things at the end of it. So to me, what's coming out of this is that like, the Viking Raiders are going to be like these fun goofball characters, which you can never have enough goofballs in this company. But that's what this felt like, that this was more so about the Viking Raiders, who kind of come out of this as like the baby faces in all of this.
I think the attempt throughout this entire month has been to try to give the Viking Raiders some level of personality. And they tried to do that with this carpool karaoke thing that I think by their own admission on TV was a complete failure. So instead, they are doing things like this, which
they had some fun lines between last week and this week. I mean, this wasn't awful. It was a lot of time dedicated to this bloody axe throwing thing. And I wonder if they're just going to continue these for a few weeks. Are we just going to go through the gamut?
Where else do you go with them? I mean,
hockey. Hockey's an easy one.
Hockey, okay. Who would be good at
of what they have access to? I don't know if they can even get into a rink right now, though. Putting the Viking Raiders on skates in their gimmicks. There's some comedy to that, probably.
I mean, the way they've done it is that everybody has an advantage thus far, or at least perceived advantage so far. So who would have the advantage in hockey?
Yeah, I don't know. It might be a pick'em. Maybe like this is like they've split both games, and now they get a wild card choice, and they're going to go to something where they're both at a disadvantage.
Yeah, could be.
I bet you Ford's great on skates. He seems like a guy that could probably have no problem playing hockey.
Oh, I mean, they're all athletes, but yeah, sure.
Skating's tough. I haven't skated in a long time.
It is difficult, but once you get the hang of it, not so bad.
Before the main event begins, Lashley comes out with MVP. MVP reminds us that Corbin retired Kurt Angle, and MVP then says, in a complete lie, that he could spend 10 minutes going over all the impressive things that King Corbin has done.
10 minutes, okay.
I was waiting for Corbin to just say, okay, go. That should have been the main event of Raw.
That would have been the longest segment on the show.
Lashley says he's putting Drew McIntyre on notice, and he's coming for his title. And they just watched the match. We got 9 minutes of Drew McIntyre, King Corbin, where Drew his thing now is like he kicks out at 1. He was hit with a superplex, kicks out at 1, does his comeback, hit with a spine buster. Then he's hit with a bunch of offense, side suplex, kicks out at 1. Then he catches Corbin with a kick to the body, future shock, but the Claymore is stopped at the deep 6. McIntyre gets up, Glasgow kiss, and then Corbin does his swing, going around the post on the floor, into the ring, off the ropes, into the Claymore, and Drew pins him 9-10, and Drew yells that I want to fight this Bobby Lashley, holds up his title to end the show, and that looks to be Backlash. Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, in the greatest WWE title match in the history of June 14th.
You really don't think this one will close the show, eh?
No, I think you have to finish with Edge and Orton. How do you follow the greatest match of all time?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Yeah, we shall see. This match was fine. I thought, just pretty standard. I would say fairly forgettable. But fine.
Yeah, almost. It kind of tells you where the heel side is. That this kind of feels like it's a waste of utilizing a guy coming over from SmackDown, which this brand to brand invitation, they definitely downplayed it this week. There was nothing set up for next week. There was no even plugging on this show that AJ's in this tournament, that I guess they pushed Charlotte and Bayley. They did promote that tonight, but the brand to brand thing, it felt very much like a back burner thing.
Right. I wonder how much of that is due to the fact that this one was taped, pretty much in succession with the last one. Was there nobody? I'm trying to think right now.
On tonight's show, there was just Corbin on the show.
Well, yeah, I guess. Okay. So you mean like there wasn't enough promotion of it?
They didn't make too big of a deal of it, nor did they kind of set anything up for anything coming up either with it.
I doubt that they know what they're doing next week.
Maybe not. Yeah, those are new shows next week. So anyway, that was Raw. Again, I thought the pacing was better than most weeks. The shorter matches I didn't have a big issue with. It's there's good and bad to it. I mean, short matches, they don't really resonate, but I thought tonight I like the submission match, what they did there. They did some good stuff with Apollo. Zelina was a standout on this show. Edge Orton segment, to me, it did what it needed to do, setting up the match. Not digging this Seth Rollins, Austin Theory, Murphy alliance, but there's and the MVP stuff. MVP with Bobby Lashley. We're like getting to that combination. So that's where we are on Raw. I thought it was an easier show to watch than some weeks.
I thought I feel like there's a happy medium where you can make sure a show flows really well while still giving people, I think, a level of match quality that I think they've come to expect now, even from something like Raw. And this week feels like it's an experiment to get there. So we shall see how the ratings reflect things. But for a taped show that typically I would say lacks a bit more energy than your fresher shows, at least I would say, I thought the show was fine and moved along well, but didn't really make that big of an impact.
I would go 6 on this show.
6 sounds good, yeah.
Well, the forum gave this a 5.07, so slightly below what we are saying. Paul from New Jersey writes, "What's with this greatest match ever crap? What a bizarre spin and unnecessary pressure to put on a match. Seth Rollins has really had a terrible run in terms of character. The Iconics got screwed. Be interested to see if that goes anywhere or if this was a simple case of Royce rage. Kairi Sane is so outgoing and refreshing while Nia Jax just stinks. Show gets a 3.
Royce rage. Not bad. All right, we got to Adam from the street who says, the beginning of tonight felt like Halloween 2, kicking off right where the previous edition left us, with Charlie still standing in the ring. A few notes on tonight. While Edge hyped up the IC title better than promos for the upcoming tournament probably will, I do not want to see him anywhere near Randy for another 9 years. I'm hoping at Backlash they really do have the best match ever, which one day becomes a topic for an entire podcast from the BDE, just so we can all move past this feud. Scott Stanford doing updates from what looked like Bill Maher's backyard was something. I think that was Sarah Logan on Hangman Page's horse. When Asuka mentioned she was a Grand Slam champion, I couldn't help but think about Bayley saying she was the only one to achieve the acclaim this past Friday. 2 weeks ago, ratings reached an all-time low. Charlotte being on every show is an obvious tool to try to gain some fan interest. While there has been some positive moments, with tonight and the promise of more on Friday, have you guys started to feel some Flair fatigue?
Flair fatigue. I mean, it's she is on all the shows. I wouldn't say it's not like she's dominating the shows. She's just appearing on all of them. Yeah, a lot of people were questioning if that was Sarah Logan or not. I don't know if it was or not. They certainly paid attention to her, that it was like they kept the camera on it. That it wouldn't surprise me if that ended up being her, but I couldn't tell. Could you?
I didn't see BTE yet. Is that what you're
No.
about?
Sarah Logan on the horse during the axe throwing segment.
Oh, okay. I didn't notice.
I mean, her like nose was all covered. It was like hard to get like a good look at her face. But anyway, lots of people were thinking it was her. Let us continue with Andrew from Cape Breton. Remember those legendary vignettes where the Road Warriors played carnival games with their opponents? At this rate, the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits will be more like the Ascension than the Road Warriors. I'm now of the belief that when those crazy revival gimmicks came out, that WWE weren't trying to embarrass them, but actually thought it was a good idea. Despite that, there weren't that many negatives on the show. Kyrie played Asuka's theme on a recorder. What more do you want? I like Charlotte just running through people. I like Austin Theory potentially getting a new role with Seth Rollins, and I like that they finally might do something with Apollo Crews. They also seem to finally be pulling the trigger on Lashley and MVP together. A lot of the angles aren't bad, but the ones that are end up being really bad. 6 out of 10.
We go to Rich in Winnipeg via East Selkirk, who says, I thought that nothing could follow up how bad the pickup game from last week would be. I was wrong. Axe throwing is worse. I thought that the police would be there to bust them for crowd size. With the bad acting, obvious cuts, and the stupid idea, it will be hard to top this in terms of bad things for them to do while waiting for their match at Backlash. I have been wrong, however. Other than that, it was yet another average empty arena show. While the Lashley-Drew pairing could be interesting with MVP involved, other than that, nothing else seems to interest me. Maybe the idea that with no AOP, Seth Rollins wants to increase his stable now, with the potential Murphy turn coming and the setup for Edge versus Orton. 4.5 out of 10.
Nick from Lansing, this was an average episode of Raw with some interesting story progressions, but not a lot to talk about in terms of matches to write home about. There's probably going to be a lot of talk about the new not wildcard rule, and as confusing as that was, I personally was most confused when Corbin and Drew were getting ready to face off, and I suddenly had the vaguest memory of these two men in a faction together. Braun Strowman was there, and Lashley was involved. I swear it was at that exact moment that Bobby Lashley's music hit, and I decided the world was fucking with me, because absolutely none of this was talked about on commentary. I need someone to back me up or set me straight.
I mean, they did mention it at the very least last week, and in the match itself, you had Corbin taunting Drew for being a follower.
Yeah, I mean, Corbin did mention it in a few promos about, riding his coattails and such. Mm-hmm. Not that it was a very memorable grouping.
No. We go to Jordan from Kitchener, who says, so that was a tough one to get through, but here's a couple of thoughts that popped into my head while watching Raw. 4, it was nice to see Sarah Logan as an extra in the sketch, so I guess so. 3, WWE tried to make King Corbin showing up tonight a big deal, but in reality, it just made me care less about the main event. Well done. 2, it's taken the company 4 years to push that new up-and-comer Apollo Creed or Crews. It only took them a pandemic to realize what they had. 1, legitimately, I forgot that Bianca Belair is on the main roster. Tonight, I got a reminder.
Yeah, they did have a video package on her. Denise from Georgia. Edge and Orton had a great match in 2004 at Vengeance and a good match in 2006 on Raw to write off Orton after his first wellness violation. They had good chemistry back then, but now I don't think they can pull it off. Austin Theory is just going from one stable to another, being someone's goon. I know it's WWE, but how did it take this long to figure out how to use Lashley correctly? The Street Profits Viking Raiders skits were a hot mess, and I'm not on board with Charlotte running through all the women. The only saving grace for this week's show is the continuing of booking for Drew. He still looks credible. 2 out of 10.
All right, we got finally Alex from Portland, who says, while I hated the axe throwing competition, it at least was a break from the empty arena setting. I am less excited about seeing the two teams meet now. Suppose I've lost the smoke. Rumors are circulating that Rey Mysterio's contract is up soon, and the eye injury last week is a way to potentially write him out of storyline. You know what else would be a great way to write a guy out of a storyline? Having him be thrown off of a roof by Baron Corbin. I see more upside in Ray Corbin feud than I do a Ray Rollins feud, at least with this current character. Question, with so many contenders on Raw, including Owens, Styles, Andrade, Black, Rollins again, and Lashley, and the potential to have someone from SmackDown challenge, what sort of priority do you think can be given to Jinder Mahal for a title shot against Drew? Is it out of the question that his title opportunity is at a pay-per-view?
They really have to heat that guy up. I don't dismiss that, but I mean, Jinder, like they brought him back. He did that promo last week that he's going to be a hero on his journey back to the top, and then nothing this week. So like they just don't have any idea for him right now, or at least they have not introduced an idea for him yet.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's something that they're building towards. At the very least, something that they can do on a TV show. Is it big enough for a pay-per-view? It really depends how well they can build Jinder back up, and that's, I think, a big if right now, considering I think the levels he's kind of fallen down to, and I think the amount of backlash, no pun intended, that the audience will probably treat a Jinder Mahal push with. But it's certainly something that I'm sure they're thinking about.
Last thing here, have you seen the second episode of The Last Ride?
Yes, I have. Yes, so I have.
This was the second episode, and this kind of picks up where the first one left off with the aftermath of WrestleMania 33 and Undertaker going back to watch this match, and he hates this match.
Yeah, to me, this one was even more interesting than the first one because, what I find so compelling is seeing a wrestler critique his own work. And especially in this case, somebody like The Undertaker, who I think there's still a great deal of novelty in seeing not just him talk out of character, but him, in this case, critiquing his own wrestling matches. And in this case, a match that I remember being on the floor, John, or not being on the floor, but being in the arena and just like cringing at the same like tombstone spot that they messed up, and just, coming out of that match not feeling all that great about it. And to see that Mark Calloway himself was probably the most critical of anybody, of any fan watching. Like, the man had tears in his eyes as he was like talking about it. That was incredibly like captivating TV.
Yeah, I thought, again, I feel like Michelle McCool is becoming like as engaging as anyone else on this, because she has the perspective of someone that she is with this man day to day and understands his just like, it's kind of the comparison of a guy that is like a compulsive gambler that's constantly just going for that next big win. And with him, he's chasing that final great match. And you're never going to despite what you may advertise a pay-per-view to be, you're never going to have that greatest match ever. There's always going to be something you can nitpick, something that you can, poke holes in. And she also has the perspective of a performer herself. And it's very interesting watching as he goes through his second hip replacement surgery after WrestleMania 33. And they're in it's the post-op, and they're both there in the hospital, and this guy is fresh out of hip replacement surgery, and Michelle McCool is talking about the fact that this is a blessing and a curse. A blessing that he's going to feel better and can do more things, but the curse is that he's going to start questioning how much more he can do. And right there, he's joking, yeah, like next April. Like, he's already got that in his mind, that WrestleMania next year, 4 weeks after this pretty definitive declaration that I'm done, I'm finished, it's immediately like his knee-jerk reaction here as they're talking on camera, that is not out of the question that I wrestle again next year. And it's like we're right back to square one. It's the only time we see like somewhat of a example of tension between the two.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you almost get the sense that it's not something that she feels like she's kind of given up on trying to control, And it in many ways, I would say, a very familiar story, especially in professional wrestling, of people being unwilling to just quit. And in this case, though, I find really interesting because it's Undertaker's motivation to redeem himself for the performance he had the year prior that made him seemingly, be more motivated to work harder than ever to get back into shape, to have a proper match at WrestleMania 34.
So like the main things covered in this are, the fallout of WrestleMania 33. He has this hip replacement surgery. And then we fast forward to the summer when he's going to Stanford with Michelle to meet with Vince McMahon, who leaves this guy hanging as he's off working out at the gym. So you got Undertaker just waiting for this guy. And that's where we kind of go into the entire relationship of the Undertaker, Vince McMahon, that I think no one listening to this would be surprised to know it's a close one, but to hear it from the Undertaker, from those around him, that this is Vince McMahon's highest lieutenant that he has, worked with for the entire duration of this Undertaker character. And the scene that I'm sure many people point to, a Vince McMahon pretty much just like breaking down, or at least being on the verge of breaking down, as he's asked what the Undertaker means to him.
Yeah. Pretty rare sight of seeing Vince, cry on camera. And I'd love to know like what led up to the question, because I think just the question itself doesn't necessarily, seem like it would command tears like that. So I'd love to know like what the context was, what sort of questions were leading up to that one.
This is like a string of Vince McMahon with like the waterworks. I mean, he was tearing up in the Andre documentary. Now this one.
Well, maybe he's just a really emotional guy.
How about the line from Kane? Vince McMahon is one of those people. If you're loyal to him, he'll be loyal to you. And unless you happen to be working with him during a pandemic where you're coming to work shows for him, I don't know how far that loyalty goes during stockholders' expectations must be met.
Yeah, I don't know either. Never worked with him. I don't know the man personally. Only know, I think, what the world knows that's being reported. Anyway, can't really speak on that.
What'd you think about his fashion choice?
Undertaker's?
No, Vince with the orange shirt.
Oh, I mean, it seemed like it was his workout shirt, wasn't it?
Orange. Like, that's I'm going out in public in orange. That's I don't give a fuck what you think about me.
Well,
statement.
This was a Saturday.
Yeah, this is Saturday at the office. And he's got to wait around for him. And then Vince kicks the cameras out. So it's not all access here. And Undertaker kind of gives them the lowdown of what they met. And he kind of just left it. It's pretty much like, what do you want to do? And Michelle notes that if Vince asks him, Undertaker will be in. Like, that's it. He's not going to anything Vince wants, Undertaker is going to do. Like, that is pretty much the relationship that Undertaker's going to do whatever he is asked by Vince McMahon to do. And it's kind of left at the fact that he's going to train and see where he feels, how he feels. And we kind of get into this whole training regimen that he puts himself through, where they have to go to this abandoned jet ski warehouse to set up a ring that the WWE has to have these rings just on standby for guys that are considering coming out of retirement. That's going to be the clincher. Send them a ring. But this one, this was much less of a luxurious setup than Edge had on his property. Yeah,
I suppose so, because
place is leaking. It just didn't seem like the most ideal place, but he trains, and then he's got a deadline of February 25th during WrestleMania season, the night of Elimination Chamber, to let Vince know if he's in or out for WrestleMania. And on that day, he waits up until the pay-per-view, sends Vince a video of him bumping in the ring and telling him that he might not be as good as he once was, but for one night he can be, and he's in for WrestleMania. And that is the setup for the John Cena match that they would build up for WrestleMania by Cena doing all the promos, and we never saw Undertaker in the lead up, and they went into WrestleMania without officially announcing the match.
That year's build, I feel like I was going into that year's WrestleMania firmly recognizing that I think the Undertaker that we were all expecting to, have that great performance, I felt the chances of that were pretty much gone, as evidenced to me by the performance in WrestleMania 33. So, and I do wonder if the WWE themselves recognize that because of how...
They definitely had to have. They had to have, given what we'll get into here with like the timing of the match and everything.
The match was incredibly short, and the fact that they didn't even announce it beforehand allowed them to let people not get their expectations too high. That we were going to see another Shawn Michaels, 5-star match or 4 3/4 star.
Which, like, that to me was the interesting part that, I don't think we had any like thought of in terms of this being a match that Undertaker was training and preparing for that 4 3/4 star match. Like he was going into this with the idea of doing that classic, and WWE, to your point in the buildup, I took it the same way, that they did not want to promise anything where the expectation level was. And let's also, like, John Cena is like a year or two removed from having those last big matches of his career. He's slowed down at this point too. That, it just seemed like the wires were crossed here. Like Undertaker was training for one thing, WWE was promoting another.
Yeah. I do wonder at what point they told Taker, hey, like the match is only going to be 5 minutes. Like, you do kind of feel bad for him. The fact that he like trained so hard to get into like, seemingly the best shape he's been in years, only to have a 5-minute match. At the same time, I completely understand the WWE being.
I don't think cautious. They made the wrong call. I don't think they made the wrong call.
Me neither. Me neither.
It does come off that it's like a last minute thing. It's not like they're timing out this show a month in advance. That I would imagine it was that weekend he found out what his time was. I would imagine it was very close to the day, if not the day.
Perhaps. At the same time, I mean, you're looking at this card, and it was already a really bloated card. Like,
it was
without the kickoff. It was already 5 hours. The whole segment itself, like you featured Cena, you had to do the whole thing with Elias getting there, like that. The whole thing probably ended up being like 20 minutes, but the match itself was just 5.
Not even. It was like he was being charitable. I looked this up. This was like 2:48. This match goes.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah, like not even 5. But again, like the year prior, I'm just looking up now. Taker and Reigns goes 23 the year prior, and I'm sure everyone acknowledged it was a bad match, and the length certainly didn't help that match. So I do not fault them making that decision, but yeah, something was definitely. Taker was coming into this, and you see him, this is a guy that you can see when he disagrees with certain things. He did that interview recently being asked about the streak, and you can read between the lines of, I asked Vince twice, are you sure? And what am I going to do? I'm not going to not go out there. I'm not going to protest. Like you can see when he disagrees, but ultimately he's going to be a good soldier, and he is not going to be the one that's going to fight and go against to get his way. Like if there's a disagreement, tie goes to Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And he just goes with Vince's plan. Like he's not going to be that guy that's going to put his foot down, it feels like.
And, coming off of the matchup with Cena and him feeling as good as he did, obviously, as we'll see in the next episode, it gave him renewed motivation to keep going.
Yeah, he's one other comment here is in the build up for this, he's working with Primo to get him ready, and he says it's the best version of himself since the 2009 match with Shawn Michaels, and then he says in a line that, let's be honest, it's almost getting comedic at this point, tomorrow may be the last time I make that walk. This being 2018, which go look up. This guy was not just doing Mania in 2018. He was doing plenty by his standards in 2018. And yeah, we get him saying, we don't sell time, we sell entertainment. And then he's off talking with the Big Show saying he trained for 45 and he got 5. And afterwards, he is happy with the performance. It's a short match, and he tells Michelle he might have another match in him, and her response is, oh, please. And he would. In fact, he would have another match in him that month, because he would be going to Saudi Arabia for the Greatest Royal Rumble show with Rusev. So, the preview of next week's episode is him being somewhat more active in 2018. He does the casket match with Rusev, and then the bigger focus is on the disaster that was Crown Jewel. Him and Kane versus Shawn Michaels and Triple H, that they label a train wreck, and Michelle McCool saying, we're right back to the start of this vicious cycle of having to redeem himself. And this is the part where you start to feel like this is, like there's a certain level of depression that sets in, that this guy is just chasing something that he may never be able to catch and be fully happy with. Like, even a good performance, like, he is happy with this John Cena match. Is it perfect? No, but he comes out of it happy, but he's back wrestling like 4 weeks later.
Certainly, yeah. And
there's also money involved here. Like, that's not brought up in this. Yes. Like, the monetary, like, this is not just creative satisfaction. It's also financial, stability as well, that he makes a lot of money to wrestle, and that has to be kind of part of this.
I would think so. But as far as whether or not he'll stop, that's something that'll be that we shall find out at the end of this entire series, because certainly everybody will, when they do cover the AJ Boneyard match, I hope that they'll cover the audience reaction to it and the fact that it was overwhelmingly positive reaction.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm sure that's going. Well, that's kind of the tease, is like episode 5. Like, Taker's almost teasing like there will be some kind of finality at the end of episode 5, like some announcement either of one more match or that was it. Like, he's kind of like hinting in that direction that by the end of 5 we'll know something.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to next week. I love it when, great wrestlers can talk about their great matches, but I almost like it as much when they can talk about their bad matches and we can see them be incredibly honest, hopefully, about their failings and what went wrong. And to me, this would be the WWE's first admission about that Saudi Arabia match just being god-awful. So I look forward to seeing that.
I hope we just get Shawn, like, get all your serious comments from Undertaker, and Hunter, like, tore his pec in that match, and then let's interview Shawn and be like, that wasn't me. I wasn't in that match.
Yeah, I'm still retired.
That never happened. Anyway, how are you liking the series so far? 2 episodes in, how did this one contrast with episode 1 with your takeaways of kind of the tone that they've established and just the content as well, how it holds your interest for 60 minutes?
I actually enjoyed this one more, and like I said, because I always find things a bit more interesting when we talk about perhaps the failings of a performer rather than just a straightforward celebration, life is good, that type of thing. You need that at the end, but I think in order to really create drama, you need some difficulty, and clearly this match at WrestleMania 33 in this episode created. Well, in episode 1, the struggle was simply to get to the match, and in episode 2, it was the struggle of wiping the memory of that terrible match away by getting ready for the next one and making sure that one you were over prepared for. So I found this one actually quite a bit more interesting.
Do you realize, and I didn't until seeing this highlight package from WrestleMania 34 that year, so Cena that year, he does the segment with Elias. The next year, he does the rap character with Elias. And this year, like, it was going to be Cena and Elias. We would have gotten 3 years of these two together.
Elias was the part of the rap thing too, eh? Wow.
Yeah, he was that last year when Cena came out.
I guess that might have been their thinking to build to a match between those two.
Yeah, look at that. It's like we'll plan 2 years of. Well, I guess he got the same treatment of Cena Rock. 3 WrestleManias together. Cena Elias. Anyway, didn't happen.
The trilogy.
Yeah, that's it. All right, that's going to bring an end to the show. Just to mention a few things going on right now. Big vote for everyone to register their selections with the Euro transfer window. The 4 cards are out, and everyone can see what Jamesy, Benno, Martin, and Andy Ogden have booked through their transfer window selections. The cards are out, and you can go on Twitter @PostWrestling and vote for which card is booked strongest of the 4.
It is pinned up there right now on the Twitter, and the voting is open until 12 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday.
All right. Tuesday night, Wai and I are going to be back with a review of Captain Marvel, where we are going to be joined by my good friend, Ed Boxler, Wai's friend as well. And we're going to review that film, which is the final film before Endgame, which will be next month's review. So if you're a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, you can grab that. Also, Andrew Thompson is going to have an interview up with Michael Oku later this week. And we've got our Double or Nothing post show Saturday night. We'll be going live right after the pay-per-view for Double, Ice Cap, and Espresso members of the Cafe. So if you're a part of that,
that's this weekend. Wow.
Saturday night, yes, we've got a pay-per-view.
It just crept up. I mean, it felt like it was so far away, but okay.
With a mystery participant in the ladder match.
Okay, cool.
Let the speculation run wild. Okay, that's going to wrap up the show. We'll be here Tuesday night for the Marvel review, and then Wednesday with Rewind to Dynamite. That is it. PostWrestling.com. Go check it out. Goodbye.